the Consortium of Cities meeting. My name is Martha Lochamy, Boulder County Commissioner. Really appreciate all of you participating. We are moving forward. We're going hybrid, and the next time we meet, it'll be a little smoother. And one of the pieces that we're going to talk about this evening is about 2023 meeting topics and also meeting time and also meeting location, because it'd be brilliant to have us meet as we did in the past in different locations around Boulder County and possibly even Broomfield. And I'm saying that because Trustee Chef just walked in the door. So we are, and I was just looking for the agenda. I apologize, y'all. We're here tonight to talk about and listen to presentations around community equity. Mark, Roslyn, thank you for your work to get us here and for sending out the questions for people to ponder, consider in their preparation. I know, I believe Ken had a presentation, and I'm not sure who else might have had a presentation just from my last emails with Mark. But want to open that conversation up. We want to realize this, we definitely want to talk and give some space. So with all that said, let's do some introductions first. And as we work out our technological pieces here as well, and then we'll get presentation set up and start there for this evening. As always, we try and have a break kind of in the middle of our meetings so that folks can stretch around and maybe eat your dinner in 5 minutes or less and check in, etc. So thank you. And we'll, it looks like we've got Boulders that's going to present as well. So with that, let's start with introductions, and I'm going to go on the screen I'm looking at right now for introductions. And let's do this because, especially for those of us in the room, because we have never been in the room. It's been 34 months since the Consortium of Cities has been in person. For me, it's only been like 20, but for others who've been with Consortium for longer, it's is rightly so feels even longer. So let's share either a fun fact, or if you want to share something about your self-care / holiday plans, or just break time between now and when we'll meet again, that's February. You're welcome to do that as well. So I'm going to start on my screen again with Councilmember Martin and then Councilmember Folkerts, and then I'll go over to Trustee Harrison.
Councilmember Martin, Longmont City Council. Fun fact, I pulled out my lawn and turned it over, and now I'm facing xeriscaping in the spring.
That sounds exciting. I'm hoping there's not an invitation for us to come and help you coming behind that, but we are excited for you. Thank you.
Am I next?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm Councilmember Folkerts from Boulder, and a fun fact. So I took a van and have turned it into a camper van, and hopefully we'll be spending a little bit of time over the holidays somewhere, probably snowy.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
I'm Trustee Harrison. I wish I had something as exciting as that to say. I'm from Erie, and I'm just trying to recover from a sprained ankle, so hopefully that doesn't screw up my ski season. And I did that while I was running in Puerto Vallarta with friends. So that wasn't fun. But other than that, just spending with family on the holidays. So that's it.
Great. Hope you have recovery. Thanks for joining us tonight. So then we'll go over to Mayor Rogan, Councilmember Peck, and then Davis.
Good evening, everybody. Mayor Rogan from Lyons. And the fun fact is I got to drive Mayor Box from Jamestown around during our holiday parade in a golf cart with Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus in the back. And we had a blast.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mayor Peck. Just popped into this meeting to see what's going on and to hear about the regional wage increase. Fun fact, I'm going to Florida for Christmas, where it's warm.
What part of Florida? Then we'll decide if it's a fun fact or not.
Jupiter, right outside Palm Beach.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Getting it. All right, so then we'll go to Ken Lenarchik.
Yeah,
And then, oh, I'm sorry. I think Megan Davis maybe was next. Now my screens are moving. I apologize. So we'll go to Megan Davis and then Ken Lenarchik and then to Taylor, and I can't see the full Reinman, and then Mark Rose.
Thank you, Commissioner. Nice to see everybody. Megan Davis with the City of Louisville. Fun fact, maybe funny, embarrassing fact. My daughter was just in the Parade of Lights with her school float, and I had to walk alongside. So I got all dressed up in an elf costume, and I got there and I was the only parent dressed up.
Oh,
That is definitely holiday spirit. Thanks for joining us, Megan. Ken?
yeah, Ken Lenarchik from Jamestown, representing Mayor Box. He didn't say anything on Monday about his trip to Lyons, but it sounds like fun. Just to clarify, my presentation is the community update, and that's all. But I would say that a fun fact, I don't know if it's fun or not, but on Wednesdays, I volunteer at the Boulder County Hazardous Material Facility. And as of next Tuesday, it will be every Wednesday, not quite every Wednesday, but almost every Wednesday for the past 10 years.
Wow. Thank you. I love that fact. Thanks for sharing.
Wow, it's hard to follow that up. But hi, everyone. Taylor Ryman, City Council Administrator for the City of Boulder, here in support of Councilmember Folkerts. And my fun fact is that I adopted a dog a few months ago, and I have not been able to shut up about it. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. And I'm being super extra. And we got Santa pictures last weekend, and walking. I've clocked like 10,000 steps every day for the last few months, and it's just amazing.
So not a COVID pet, but maybe.
No.
Yeah. Good. That sounds so fun.
I think we need to see the dog, Taylor. I'm just saying you can't mention it without showing us the dog.
If the dog showed up during this meeting, I agree, Mayor, that would be so appropriate. Okay, so before Mark, Trustee Schaff, I'm sorry.
that's right. Councilmember Devin Schaff, City and County of Broomfield. Thanks for letting me crash your meeting tonight. Fun fact, the Broomfield High School football team just won the 4A state championship this last weekend. So fun fact, they haven't done it. That's the first time they've done it since in 34 years. So it's been a while.
Wow. All right. Sports fan over here.
And Mark Rosen, Boulder County Commissioner's Office staff. I'm glad I got to go after Devin because it gave me a few more seconds to try to think of a fun fact, which I still haven't really thought of one, except the band that is playing across the street at the Boulder Theater doing their annual holiday show with Face. And I used to do some work with one of the members of Face. So I actually heard them warming up in the alley behind the theater as I was walking to this meeting. So that was cool. And just happy holidays, everyone.
So if Mark disappears temporarily, we'll know where he's at. He'll be next door in the auditorium.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. So again, my name is Martha Luchmain, County Commissioner. So I am going to share this fun fact because Mobility and Access Coalition, I serve with that group as well. And we had a similar conversation. And I had forgotten that one of my jobs, because that was more around work, I had a temporary stint at 7-Eleven as the candy inventory person. And so my shift was, I had to be in there between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. to count the candy once a week. Fun fact for anybody, because I had actually completely forgotten that that was a part of my journey. And just the other day I was driving down Belmont, I was like, oh, wait a minute. That's why that place looks so familiar. Fun fact. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate everybody being here and participating. And as always, if we see folks jump in, we'll try and give them an opportunity in between presentations to introduce themselves as well. Yeah. Okay, I think we got everybody here. Yeah. So we are going to do our community equity presentations first, and then we'll go into old new business. We have an update on our regional local wage conversation, and then of course 2023 planning. So just want to make sure we watch our clocks and while we're doing our presentations. Folks in the room, we can nudge each other. All you virtually are going to have to watch your own clocks. So thank you. Let's see here. It looked, Ken Lenarchik, you had just a community update that you wanted to share. And so maybe we'll bring that one up so that we can go through that one. And then Boulder, Taylor, thank you. I got your note. Is there anybody else that had a presentation or just wanted to present some information or updates in regards to their equity work so we can line folks up?
Okay, Mark, you could, are you able to go ahead and share your screen? You could put the PDF up first.
Would you like this page?
That's the one.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. My name is Ken Lenarchik. I'm with the town of Jamestown, and this summer and spring we began to initiate a wildfire mitigation program. And this is a kind of a map of Jamestown where it shows some of the forest treatments. But the Jamestown Mitigation Project is basically on the what would be on the screen, the west side of the screen, and that's that side of town. You can go. We can go to the presentation now, Mark. Okay, on reason that I put this in our town end of the year community update is because last spring when we were just starting up on this, there was a lot of interest from other communities about how what we were doing and how we're doing it, and so I can give you a little report about where we are in the project as of December of 2022. So the Jamestown Wildfire Mitigation Project is funded by the St. Vrain Left-Hand Water Conservancy District. That's a taxing district who got an increase a few years ago when they're starting to put the money back into some of the communities and the watersheds. And it's administered by the Watershed Center, which formerly was known as the Left-Hand Watershed Center. And the mitigation actual work and hard labor is being done by the Left-Hand Fire Protection District. So of the 100 or 105 or 110 residential properties in Jamestown, 45 these properties on the west end of Jamestown agreed to have wildfire mitigation work done on their property. So as the work actually began in September 12th, they wanted to do it sooner, but it took quite a while to get all the cats herded up and everybody signed off on the on permission slips so that they can do the work. And to that, add to that, also the crew was called away for a couple of weeks in the summertime and went to California to work on the fires that were out there. So we didn't get a summer start, but we got almost a summer start in the middle of September. And the project will continue through winter, weather permitting. It's difficult for them to do it on steep slopes, but right now they're working on some flat areas. And so far, of the 45 or so properties, 11 have been started. 2 properties are absolutely complete. 5 properties would be complete, but weather's and other factors are preventing the slash and the log removal from taking place. But those things, in some cases, can wait. And so that's 7 properties, and we're working on 3 currently. And the last property, the owner has delayed completion because he has some additional work he wants to do before finishing up this particular project. So next slide, please. So it's kind of a before and after picture. These are not the same lots, by the way, but to give you an idea is that a lot of Jamestown is just looks a lot like the National Forest. These are properties that haven't, in many cases, have not been mitigated, and everything is just growing wild. So the idea is to reduce the density of the trees, remove those trees and plants which would be ladder fuel or are not resistant to fire, and try to keep the healthiest ponderosa pines as possible. And so the picture on the right is a lot that has been mitigated. Most of the cutting has been done. Still a little bit of work to do so the slashed get pulled away. But that's the idea, to open things up so that there's some space between the trees and we're not dealing with the canopy of trees. Next slide, please. And this is just some other things that we've been doing in Jamestown over the year. We now have partnered with US Solar for residents to be able to purchase subscriptions to solar gardens. And we've been, the town's provided a venue, a building, our community barn for the Jamestown Food Pantry. And the Jamestown Food Pantry is part of the Jamestown Area Community Foundation, and those are the folks who've been doing the work on that. Our recycling programs continue thanks to the grants from Boulder County, as also improvements to our community gardens. Those continue to grow and they get to be in more and more demand. And we are finishing the improvements expansion of community ditch, and we hope that will be done forever this summer. Well, not forever, but it seems like it took forever. And other things that we've been partnering with the Jamestown Mercantile in the summertime, June through September, Friday nights, summer nights in the park with music. And that's my community update. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate your presentation and the update information. Any questions for our Jamestown representative? Yes, Councilmember Chef.
Thanks. So I just have one question. What struck me with this topic especially is around kind of community strength. And I noticed that you put in there the Jamestown Food Pantry. And I'm curious, we are seeing increased need. At the same time, we're seeing our community rally. I was just curious if you're seeing the same thing up in Jamestown with an increased need for food and those basic services, and is your community rallying as well?
I would say that, and of course, it's not limited to folks that live in Jamestown, but people come from the surrounding areas as well. And it's only open for I'd like 1 or 2 hours on a late Monday evening, and people are conditioned. They're there. The cars are lined up, and people are lined up for the stuff. And I can only say that from my observation of what's going on, the need and demand for that food is growing. At the same time, it's getting harder and harder for the volunteers because of the vast amount of material, food that has to be picked up, and then the cardboard and everything else that has to be removed. And then there's also food that doesn't get eaten, and that has to be dealt with also. So yeah, I mean, it's getting to be a fairly big project. And I would say, yeah, we're getting more and more demand.
Thanks.
Thank you. Other questions for Kim? All right. Thank you. Thanks for being here and for presenting. Appreciate that. Boulder? I can see that you've started screen sharing. Are you needing anything from us? Does somebody need to make you a host?
Yeah, I don't. Taylor, you should be able to screen share just directly from the Zoom,
I'm guessing that's me.
maybe not. I don't know how to do that.
Or she says it just froze up. She needs a minute.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
I see, yeah, and yes, make a host. I guess I could just. Yeah, couldn't hurt, right? I hope.
We just made you host, Taylor. We don't know if that'll help or hurt, but
Yeah,
yeah. Do you want us to come back to you, Taylor? And you could always send your presentation over to Mark too, and then. You can host. Okay. Who was the next presenter? Did we have somebody else? I didn't have anybody else on my list. Was there anybody else that wanted to? I didn't have anybody else signed up. Which is okay, because we can move into our next presentation. And then come back.
I can chat for a minute if that's okay,
Yeah.
even though I haven't signed up. Oh, I see Taylor's ready to go. Oh, okay. I'll still chat for a second. So, you know, Lions is, to be quite frank, had a lot of struggles with community equity over the years. And I'm happy to say that this Board of Trustees is committed to beginning to address them. It's going to be a long haul. There's no question about it. In fact, you may or may not know, we're finishing up our comprehensive plan, which is exciting. One of our planning commissioners resigned because he did not want the word equity included in the plan. And so I think one of our struggles is how to educate the community and how to unite the community around issues of equity. We, for the first time, are becoming members of the Boulder County NAACP, which is really exciting for us. And we're hoping that we can partner with them to help us and do some community events. So any advice or input, I would be just thrilled to get if anybody has any.
Great, thank you. And I'll just say, Mayor, this is the place to have those conversations, and the frankness and the candidness is really important. And for us to come around any municipality or any local government that's having issues with getting support, that's what we're here for. Thank you. Any questions and or folks that might have some ideas that they want to share? Otherwise, you can always connect. Go ahead, Trustee Harrison.
Yeah, I just for Holly and anybody else, we started up our DEI effort about a little over a year ago. And so like every effort, especially in a town that's not all that diverse at this time, we went through some issues at the beginning and some challenges that we had, but we've overcome them. So Holly, if you need any assistance or want to reach out to our team that is doing the work, let me know and I'll try to sync you up, and anybody else as well, and try to sync up. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Ari. I appreciate that, and I will reach out. You might be
Okay.
sorry.
No, that's right. It's good.
That's what we're here for. Thanks for that. Megan?
Yeah, thank you. I think, you know, we're in a little bit of a similar position in Louisville. We've done some work, some community-based work around identifying sort of like issues and opportunities around equity, diversity, and inclusion, and then have also been working internally we created a blueprint with the help of a consultant. And then, when the fire happened, that sort of set us back a little bit. We just didn't have the capacity to be able to dedicate what we needed to really integrate the work into our team the way we wanted to. So we actually now have a position posted. So, similar to Holly's comments, I think it would be really helpful to hear from communities, or even be able to get connected to communities who have DEI or EDI positions or equity managers on their team and on their staff, because this is a brand new position for us. And, we really want it to be successful. There's a lot of, there's been a lot of information lately just about how this is such an emerging field in terms of, kind of just a new kind of area of employment. And so there's just not a lot of information and data around how to make this successful. And also that there's a lot of turnover because people come into organizations and there's all these expectations that they're going to fix all of our equity problems. And we know that's not realistic. So it would be great to connect with the other communities who have staff and create sort of a network so they can work together. But also we would love to hear from others so that we can help make this person as successful as possible once we get them on board. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I saw Trustee Harrison's note in the chat for everybody's invited to reach out to Erie. So appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Was that a no problem?
Oh, no, that was, you're welcome. And
okay.
I mean, and I can provide a little update for Erie as well, what we're going through. And then Taylor, if you're ready to rock, I'll finish up. It won't be too long.
Okay.
So basically for Erie, what we just started on December 1st, we held our first meeting for our Home Rule Charter Commission. So that we are ongoing that wonderful effort that I'm sure some of you have already been through. So if there is any tips and advice, we'd love to hear it. But that commission is getting going. They were elected. I think we have 7 very good people to do the work, actually 9, and so we're really excited about that. Also, we just, after about 3 years, we finally are able to get our town center broke ground, the first part of that property on, if anybody knows Erie, the south side of Erie near the Greek Orthodox Church at Austin and County Line. You'll see a huge dig going on. So we had a groundbreaking ceremony for that for about 2 weeks ago. So that's the first phase of the work. So I think we had the charter charrette that we had done for the town back in 2019, 2018, somewhere around there. And so from there to now, I think it's pretty quick to try to turn it around. And so we had to do a lot of zoning changes specific for that area. So the staff really worked hard on that to get that going in regard to that. So those are the 2 big things. And this past week we had our Erie Parade of Lights, which we trustees handed out candy to all the kids. And if you ever want to see a bunch of kids that are going crazy, just throw candy at them or try to put it in their hands, and you will know the full breadth of their desire to have a sugar high. So, and the other thing just coming up, and I don't know if you all have had experiences with this, we're having metro districts that are failing in their obligations to maintain their facilities. And so Erie Highlands is one of our metro districts that's having some issues with that. And so the residents are coming to us, ironically enough, to ask for any assistance that we can provide within what the law allows us to do. And because the costs are getting rather expensive, what we have at least found anecdotally is they aren't charging the amount of fees appropriate for the maintenance of those facilities. And so as a result, it's causing issues like the pools aren't working correctly. There's a foundational issue with the Colliers Hill guest house that they're having problems. So if you're running into any of those things, just know that you're not the only one. And you can certainly reach out, and maybe there's some best practices we can share if we hear anything. But that's pretty much the big stuff that's going on right now in Erie.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Erie? Ideas, solutions in regards to metro districts or any of those other topics? Yeah. Okay. Great, thank you. Taylor, I got your message. You're ready to go. Thanks for working with us.
Yeah, let's try this one more time. How are we doing now?
We can see a presentation.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. I'm gonna get started pretty quickly. I was really excited to come and talk about this. I normally ask one of our expert staff members to come and join these topic specific presentations, but I actually serve as a racial equity ambassador for the city of Boulder. And a lot of my work in my job just actually touches on advancing equity in our city. And so I thought I was maybe cut out for it. You know, as a public service professional myself, I do feel like equity work is one of the most important things that we can do for our communities. That's not to suggest that it replaces other work or is at the expense of other work, but figuring out how to embed the importance of making our communities a place where everybody can thrive is something that for me is deeply important. I wanted to start with just a little bit of framing, and it was really helpful actually to hear about some other folks and where they're at with things. That actually really inspires me, because I think as folks are starting in their journey, there's a lot that we can learn from one another, and there's a lot of alignment that we can build. So I really would be open to connecting folks with other people in the organization. I am but one cog in a complex network of people and teams and projects that are focusing on equity. But anyways, I digress. Our first racial equity plan in Boulder was adopted in 2020, and a few of the key sort of focus areas is that first off, we lead with race, because it's often the greatest predictor of access and success in our current systems. We're race explicit in how we do things, meaning that we aim to move race forward first, but we're also not race exclusive, meaning that it's not like we ignore other facets of identities, including gender and class and ability, looking at the whole picture and the intersectionality of everybody's identities is important, but leading with race is what we do to try to sort of make all boats float. The second is that while we are doing a lot in our community to move equity forward, our main focus right now is really on internal capacity building and alignment. We see sort of a need to get our house in order, if you will, before moving to undertakings that are more broad and bringing the equity into the journey. This is important for a lot of reasons: trust building, of course, you know, not wanting to go into the community and without first figuring out our own footings in the equity work, and there being a headline that's bad and again erodes that trust. So making sure we're set with those things. And then the last, and this is really important, is that the work is relational. If you've ever seen Boulder's racial equity plan, it's beautiful. It's got a great roadmap. It's got an amazing, robust table at the end that lays out how we're going to do things and what the outcomes and the metrics are. But you can have a beautiful racial equity plan and still moving the needle, in my opinion, is not about task completion. It's not about numbers. Moving the needle is about a feeling. It's an ultimate goal of changing organizational cultures to think in terms of equity, habitually asking the hard questions, trying to understand and support one another's journey to better understand the issues, and in creating an environment of welcoming and belonging. It's something you feel more than something you measure. And I think that's what makes it so hard and also so important. And it comes through in all of our interactions, from council meetings to water cooler chats. All right, so now getting into the actual questions for this the presentation. Tools and assessments, we've got quite a few. The racial equity instrument was our first to be developed to assess policies, programs, and budget decisions. It's laid out there in the side. Those are our 6 steps. There's a much more robust, the full instrument. I'm happy to share it, but those are sort of the high level steps that you walk through in a racial equity instrument assessment. The second one is the rapid response racial equity assessment. This one came out of the COVID-19 pandemic. We were in a position where we needed to make decisions quickly. And sometimes, especially in a scenario where we're seeing the pandemic hit the hardest on minority communities, we need to make sure that our recovery efforts are, we take a step back and we really consider what are the unintended impacts of what we're doing. The next 2 kind of tie together. The Department Racial Equity Assessment is a self-assessment for departments to kind of figure out where are they at with things. Are they using the instrument? And if so, how? Have people in your department taken the trainings that we offer, and we offer 3, I'll get into that. And this is really the foundation for building a JEDI team, a justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion team. And JEDI teams are important too, because what I've noticed in equity work is that in its development, it's kind of mirrored sustainability work, in that equity and sustainability can touch almost everything, arguably. And this is new and it's upcoming. Is it a single person in your city manager's office? Is it a team of people in a certain department, maybe HR? And that's kind of how sustainability started in terms of the administrative organization. But what we're seeing more and more now is that there's a need to embed equity in all parts of the system and not let it live with any single person or team or project. And so that's what our JEDI teams are trying to do, is we're standing up these teams in all departments across the city. We have a toolkit for doing so, which outlines how do you select your leaders of this team, how do you form a group, develop a charter, and then make sure you're administering the work of the department in coordination with the racial equity plan. And the final is the trans-trader model. I think folks have heard about this sort of thing. We work with partners to develop our 3 trainings, which are the racial equity instrument training, the advancing racial equity role of government training, and then bias and microaggression training. At first, we develop those, and then we sort of build internal expertise and training capacity. And that's my role as a racial equity ambassador. I am actually the trainer for bias and microaggression. Next is partnerships. The question was, which partnerships are the most helpful in advancing your efforts community-wide, and especially for folks starting off on their journey. I've heard a lot of local government organizations have success starting with working with GARE, so the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. Some of you might have heard it, but they're national, they're leaders, they're a great source for ideas and connections and models. And you can become a member and get access to all of these things. And so we've been a member, I believe, since 2015, and they are really our major partner in starting up our equity journey. Our second ones that I highlighted here are community connectors. This program is members of our community. They're paid a stipend, and these individuals are well connected to their communities. They're often from diverse and unique backgrounds and plugged into communities of diverse and unique backgrounds. And we really rely on them to give us qualitative and quantitative feedback on any sort of policy decision we're facing, budget decisions we're facing. What's really cool about this group is, first off, just they're rad people. And second off, they often bring us information from people who we never would have gotten their opinion in a survey, because a survey just wouldn't have gotten to them, or a round table or an engagement session. You know, they're really connecting with people who have maybe never interfaced with their government before. And that gets back to the relational work of this, is that it's really those person-to-person interactions that move all of this forward. It also makes it a real slow roll. Next up is challenges. There are several listed here, but I want to highlight a few because I've timed myself on this presentation and I know I'm going to go over. So utilization of tools and instruments, it's when people sometimes are looking at the racial equity instrument, for example, it can be really an apprehensive experience. It asks people questions that they've never maybe asked themselves before. It asks you to collect information that maybe we don't have or you don't know how to get. And so getting everybody sort of comfortable with, you know, you don't have to be perfect at utilization, but let's have a conversation about what that would look like. But then getting to that perfection part is how do we make sure that using it is consistent and it's robust. And so, and there's a lot of different ways that we could be applying the racial equity instrument. So many programs, policies, and budget decisions. So how do we prioritize what's going to have the highest and most meaningful impact? Work with those project managers closely and help resource any sort of support that they need so that we can have a good, not only an instrument, but a good utilization, a consistent utilization that brings us meaningful results. Another thing that I wanted to mention is regional alignment. So I'll give an example. We sort of initially undertook the idea of standardizing gender designations across the city. So gender designations being male, female, non-binary, agender, things like that. Because right now we have a lot of different areas that we ask for that demographic information in. They don't all line up. They're not all that inclusive. And so at first we formed a team and we had some ideas, but then actually at the state level, I'm not sure if you guys have heard about the data health equity legislation that was just recently passed, but out Boulder County championed it. And basically it calls on CDPHE to collect health equity data. And so that spans across race, ethnicity, gender, class, or not class, but ability. And they're forming a data advisory group to sort of say, like, what should that data collection look like? Well, now having data is cool, but what's cooler is being able to compare data. And so we recognize the desire to align whatever we do with what the state does so that we can be doing apples to apples comparisons and make our information collection and analysis more meaningful. So we've implemented a few short-term solutions for our gender designations, but there's a longer term effort, and we're sort of waiting on the state and seeing what they do. But this is just an example of regional alignment. You know, what we're experiencing in Boulder is the same thing that you guys are experiencing, and we want to make sure that we're moving our work forward in ways that are meaningful to everybody. And so to the extent that we can align our goals and outcomes, nice tie-in, we'd be very interested in doing that. And again, getting back to that relationship building, Boulder we have experienced several years now of our equity journey. We've learned a lot of things. We've made a lot of mistakes. All of it needed to happen so that we can keep moving this forward. And we're really interested in connecting with people wherever they're at on their journey in a sharing capacity. How do we not only share informations and experiences, but how do we invite people in to look at the trainings that we do and just see how are we doing it to inform maybe how could you do it? I'm going to go ahead and stop there. I had one last slide, but sure, I'm over.
I think you're okay, Taylor, if you want to finish your last slide.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Standpoint of I don't think we have any additional presentations.
Okay. Well, I wanted to really bad because this work is hard and it's hard felt too. And I think part of keeping us going is celebrating when jobs are well done. And some of those jobs well done are outlined here. So in our most recent flood and stormwater master plan update, they ran through the racial equity instrument and they did a really great job. They realized that historically, the way that we've prioritized projects in our master plan work is by property value. And in running through this instrument, what we realized is that we really need to look at community impacts instead of property value and prioritize those for project work. In our drought plan update, we ran through the instrument and put less reliance on price signals to incentivize behavior, and then also reduce the burden for lower income communities to do water reduction during a drought. I kind of just read those because those two I wasn't very involved in, but this third one here I actually was involved in. So goal number 5 in our equity plan really looks at boards and commissions And there's a few reasons for that. One, it is kind of an internal, again, the work that we're doing internal, but also it's one of the most, in our opinion, it's one of the highest sort of engagement touch points that we have with the community. The people that make our boards and commissions, they give a lot to the city, and they're also in their own way connectors to the community. And so I helped co-facilitate a 24-hour DEI training for our board and commission staff and liaisons. This was over several months. And we ran through all of the stages of the board and commission sort of life cycle, if you will, talked about what does it look like to bring more inclusive behavior into all of those points, like how do we reach people that we're not normally reaching, because the diversity on our boards and commissions it's largely white. And so actually some of what came out of this work was really inspiring. We, for the first time, appointed someone who is more comfortable with Spanish as their first language to the Human Relations Commission. And this has been a great learning experience for us, because this has also prompted us to do things like translate a lot of our forums into Spanish and offering our first board and commission meeting in both languages with interpretation. It's been challenging, but as much as sometimes these challenges are hard to navigate, it also prompts us to do the work that we need to do. And there's a lot of work to be done. How do we prioritize that? Sometimes it's just a product of being presented with said challenge and working through it. So wanted to highlight those bright spots, but that is the end of my presentation. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Taylor. Appreciate it. Any questions for Taylor or Boulder?
Can I put just a quick plug in for, I think, there's so many things that Taylor talked about are really exciting, and I'm so excited that Boulder's working on them. The community connectors piece is, I think, there are so many facets to the impacts that it has, and because they're able to sort of bring back feedback on, again, things that are coming up in our meetings, feedback that we wouldn't get from surveys like Taylor mentioned, but also, the candidate that came forward for the Human Relations Commission also was connected, I believe, through the Community Connectors program, and sort of found out about the opportunity that way. And so it really, it's not just the information that they are able to bring sort of to council, but also just changes the level of interaction that you can have with a broad variety of groups in the community.
Great. Thanks, Taylor. Appreciate the update information. I would just want to check in and make sure there was nobody else that wanted to give a quick update on their community equity that we didn't know about. I don't want anybody to feel like they got cut out of an opportunity to talk, which is okay. And I'll just give a kind of a quick update. We did not, Boulder County, we didn't ask our staff to bring a presentation this evening, because mid-August we announced the opening of our Office of Racial Equity, brought on a director, and now have 2 staff people who were doing some similar work and who've been brought over to that department. So it's a department of 3, and they hosted today the first racial equity forum for Boulder County staff. And so we were like, wait, it's not okay to ask them to then come here tonight and give us an update. And there was just a lot of new learnings today, I think, for a lot of folks. We have about 2,300 employees, and there was the number I heard was about 300 folks that participated today. So it was exciting. And Mark and I haven't even had a chance to just debrief and share what our reactions were. But so we are doing some work and really focusing some similarities with what the City of Boulder is doing in other areas. We are also members of GARE, do work with the Courageous Conversations about Race, use racial equity tool, the assessments, same documents, just different titles that each community has chosen to use. Instead of community connectors, we have been working with cultural workers over at the same similar timeframes, et cetera. So, but just want to, from a informational standpoint, that's kind of what's happening at the county, and also focusing internally. What does that work need to look like in our own systems, in our own policies, our own procedures, our own funding, our own purchasing, our own contracting, our own hiring, our own recruiting, our own retention, et cetera. So just a quick share out. So this is what we're gonna, oh, go ahead, Megan.
Thank you. Thank you both for all the information. That was really helpful. I have a question for both Boulder County and the City of Boulder about your partnership with GARE and the development of some of your resources and tools. Did you start with the tools that GARE kind of has in terms of your equity tool? And then I guess, Taylor, did you use a team of folks like your JEDI team to help develop your tool, or how did you put that together? How did you develop that? What was that process like?
So I can start. I know that we often start with GARE because it's a great network, and they have a lot of great ideas. Why reinvent the wheel when you don't have to? But I wasn't part of the actual team that put that together. Our racial equity journey started, with like 1 or 2 people kind of working on this as part of their job. And we've expanded now to have various teams across various departments. But I'd be happy to put you in touch with Amy Kane, who has been leading this work for many years. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of nods. We all love Amy Kane. And she could fill you in on that. But I do know that GARE is a starting point for a lot of that sort of stuff.
And similar, yes, so when you become a member of GARE as your governmental agency, you get access to a bunch of templates, a ton of templates to that racial equity tool. And what my understanding is from participating this year in a GARE conference and talking with folks around the country, that people have done some cut and paste, et cetera. But it's also this opening, like Taylor was talking about, of a network of folks who have been part of national dialogues virtually this year with other folks. As an example, we're really looking at affinity groups or employment resource groups, or whatever title you want to put on that. And so was able to convene with a bunch of people in the GARE network virtually to find out who's doing it, who's having legal issues, who's got concerns, who's in the process, and people share templates. So it's a really great forum. They do a lot of different trainings, videos that you then as a member you have access to, and you can go use those resources. So if folks aren't involved, that might be a really great way. I know Denver had a really great showing earlier this year in Portland at that same conference, and there are folks in Denver they had a great showing of folks from different departments, and they're wanting to build some regional collaboration for the state of Colorado, and there were some state folks there as well. So depending on how much, where your interest is, the capacity is a real piece. I will share some just conversation from today and one of the speakers, and it's a conversation I've been having in my almost 22 months at my current role, that we really do have to move away from diversity, equity, inclusion, and move towards actually addressing equitable outcomes. And it's also process. And as Taylor kind of alluded to, everybody's in their own spot in the racial equity journey. And for some local governments, as the mayor shared, some folks aren't ready to talk about equity. Some folks are still concerned about CRT. Some folks are. And so how do we, so that common language and that common terminology can be really helpful. And I think that's the beauty of something like GARE. I personally am not a big proponent of CCAR and previous conversations about race. And it creates the same terminology for folks to get in a room together or to get in the same organization workspace, and allows us to start doing work together. So I think that's some of the benefits of being part of that type of an organization. So hopefully that's helpful. Any other questions for Boulder or Boulder County? You know how to get a hold of all of us, and you're welcome to do so. And also Trustee Harrison shared info to let's continue doing the work together. I really appreciate that. So it is 7:32. As always, take a little break here. In the room, we're going to stretch and have snacks. Just saying. Just saying. And then we'll come back, because really what we need to talk about, we're going to first have our presentation when we get back on the regional local wage, just to get an update on where things are and get some feedback from folks who are participating this evening. We also want to talk about 2023 and look at the calendar, talk about times, talk about locations, etc. So that's the plan. So let's come back here on your digital. We should all have the same digital time, and we'll come back at let's see, 7:38. So we have just about 5 minutes. Thank you, and you'll hear my voice in about 5. Thank you. All right, everybody. Finish up your dinner.
Have dinner. Crackers for dinner.
Yeah, well, I did have bean and nut snack mix. Good, right? It is good. I mean, if I'm gonna have a snack for dinner, yes. All right, everybody, thank you. That's really good. Thank you for joining us, and we'll get started. So here's the next presentation we have is an update in regards to regional local wage, and so want to give folks an opportunity to listen in and ask some questions, just really have some dialogue so that we all have an idea. I know a lot of us are working on okay, what's happening in 2023, considering what that might mean for 2024 if plans shift, etc. So we're here to listen, and I'll just turn it over to Councilmember Folkerts, and you let us know who's going to present and talk, and we're here.
Okay. Yeah, I'll start and then Devin jump in. So work is continuing on minimum wage and sort of forming a group to look at that. We've looked at engagement strategies. We've collected some analysis and local data on wage rates and what a self-sufficient wage would be in our communities. We've also started outlining what would be required for an IGA and learned more of the ins and outs of the enabling state law. And right now, our current focus is creating a framework for the collaboration moving forward. So, as our councils move towards the retreats and, work plans for the upcoming year, we're trying to have a conversation about and get more clear on what kind of a lift it would be for all the various participants in this process, and sort of what's reasonable for communities. I've been hearing a lot recently about sort of capacity challenges, and so we're still trying to refine what exactly that looks like, but working towards kind of an engagement letter or a sign-on that we might commit to a certain level of participation to bring this forward. Right?
Yeah, I can say some. So I think that, when we started these conversations this last fall, I think the idea is that we were continuing to move forward and try to gain as much of a regional presence as possible. And I think that, what we found out is that this is a hard lift for a lot of communities. And especially right now, there's a lot of pressure concerning inflation. There's a lot of, I guess, maybe apathy is not quite the right word, but for a lot of workers, they are not making that minimum wage, and businesses are paying well above that minimum wage. So for a lot of people, they're saying, "Hey, why now? Why this push now?" And so I think that those are some of the pressures that are coming on. Staff capacity is a real thing. So in Broomfield, this was definitely something I brought to all my council members, and we gained a lot of support from my council members. But staff capacity is a hard one, and so I've been talking with a lot of my council members, and I think that it's kind of tentative, but I think that we're going to delay this conversation for at least a year for Broomfield, just because we do not have the capacity to have it this year, and we have some more groundwork to do. We have some grassroots conversations to have with our employees in Broomfield and making sure that we're on the same page. But this is it's a big lift in terms of the work that we have ahead, and I think that the big thing is the sooner these conversations happen within all of our jurisdictions, the better that we are going to be as we continue to move forward. So.
Thank you. Who has questions for this team? And this is, just to be clear, both and there might be other people, so maybe you want to share who else you've been talking to, just so folks have an idea. As basically a subcommittee that you all accepted to lead this conversation and see what might happen with support of consortium cities.
Yeah, or I think also if anyone on the call wants to sort of share, talk about any of this discussions they've had with their councils, or sort of where they're at in thinking about this and work planning in the upcoming year.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to open up for questions and conversation, but I was just curious if you could share who else is part of this subcommittee, just so people have an idea, because it's not just the two of you.
Yeah, I mean, so after our sort of last presentation, we've had a couple of meetings, but it has been challenging to get everyone in the same room. So we've had people from Louisville and people from Longmont, and it's been a little bit, Ari from Erie comes, but it's been changing sort of between meetings.
Okay, no, I wasn't sure, I guess. Thanks. So what about questions from folks? Curiosities, ideas? And Councilmember Folkert's question is really important. If folks have had conversations with their own councils or boards to give this committee an idea of what that conversation is, will be helpful. Mayor Rogan.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for that update. I really appreciate it. I'd like to share that, we did discuss this as a board, and one of the challenges that Lions has is that we are a very seasonal economy, and many of our businesses barely scrape by. In fact, we have a USDA funded revolving loan fund at 0% interest that businesses can borrow from. We have 100% payback rate, and we have maybe 5 or 6 businesses in town that borrow from it every single year to get through the winter. And so we're in a position too where our businesses are having trouble finding workers. Part of that is a housing issue, which we're actively working on. So I can say that creating a local minimum wage in Lions is not going to go over well either with the board or with our business community or Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Others?
I would just say, so in Louisville, our council, I know Councilmember Brown has attended some of the discussions, and this is an issue that he is, very interested in. And I think we have other council members that are as well. It was included in our 2022 work plan to continue the discussions regionally around this issue, but not as something specifically that City Council would discuss unless kind of a regional proposal came forward. So currently, as we're drafting and moving into our 2023 work planning process, which will actually start next week, it's reflected in the same way. So I won't know until we have that discussion if they intend to have a specific discussion around whether or not they want to move in this direction without seeing some regional kind of proposal or initiative that they could kind of align with. So that's kind of where we are. But we really haven't had the chance to have a specific discussion about, the potential benefits and impacts in our community with stakeholder engagement and public input.
Thank you.
I think from Erie's perspective, even though our town administrator, we opted out, I wanted to be engaged in it, and I think it's important to be engaged in it. I shared some of the similar concerns where I know as a split community that we are, that everybody hears about between Weld County and Boulder County is a real thing. And I think that the issue of a minimum wage would be probably a non-starter, and people will go crazy, especially when most of our businesses are on the Weld County side, ironically, now that although that 9 Mile is starting to crop up. The one anecdotal evidence that I will give, though, that it's a challenge is that the Taco Bell that's located right there where Lowe's is only open like 3 days a week because they can't find workers. And that's an issue for a lot of people. And so for those new businesses that are going to be coming in there, it will be interesting to see what happens for them, see if that similar issue occurs. And then also the outside of Lowe's, I know this might be a sore subject with Lafayette and others, but the King Soopers that was supposed to go in there, that was supposed to break ground in October. That has not because of the merger that is ongoing. And so what impact that may have as a major employer base coming into Erie, for instance, and helping out those in Lafayette as well. It's right there on the border. So I think it's a challenge in that regard. Where the issues came up for us as well from an income perspective and wage was what we're doing with affordable housing, because I think they're linked. And we're going through our affordable housing issue, and I know that's something that we might talk about possibly next year. But the sober sort of analysis that we've had from our consultant, the AMI that's required for affordable housing in Erie, is between $75,000 and $120,000 a year income. So that's what our salary is for affordable housing in Erie in order for affordable housing to qualify. I mean, that's your teachers, your police officers, all of those other individuals. And that's the big challenge. And one of the things is the average price of a home in Erie, for instance, and might be in some other communities, is $800,000. So you have to come to the table with about $260,000 to buy a home in Erie. So when you're talking about affordable or talking about a living wage and other things, we are so skewed in terms of how we try to do that, because we really want to have housing for those of us who work in Erie and in the government, as well as for those who may not be at that wage scale. So they don't have to commute an hour to get to work. And so I think that's the big challenge, how those are two interlinked areas. But I'm willing to continue to be a part of it and help.
Thank you. Appreciate that info. Mayor Peck?
Thank you. I echo what everyone else has said. We have not had this discussion on council, but I do want to bring it up. One of our main concerns for me is that many of our small businesses did not get CARES money during the pandemic. So it's very difficult for them to think about raising any wages when they're struggling to keep their businesses open and to get workers. But I do think the conversation needs to go on, hopefully after inflation, when everything is costing so much, and it's costing the retailers a bit of anxiety as well, not knowing what's going to be happening in our economy. And the housing is a huge issue as well. But it's kind of tricky in that if we don't raise the wages, we're not going to be able to pay rent or even save for a down payment on a house or pay off our credit cards so that we have good credit to apply for a loan. So I do want this open. I am going to open it up on council in the new year, and we need a robust discussion about how we can go forward. It will not be accepted well by our business community at all at this time. So any information or anything that has worked in other cities, I would love to have that input as we go forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to get a repeat of the timeline, the points at which the regional minimum wage reaches certain dollars per hour level, because I'm not sure how far apart. I'm sorry. civ brain here.
So, based on the sort of state the law that this is under, the maximum that it can increase is 15% per year. So right now, the wage rate is 12.30.
65, 1265.
So when we were looking at it before, Denver's at 17 something. And it would take us at least 3 years to catch up with Denver. If you were doing the maximum allowed increase every year. And again, that's the most that it could be. And so part of this, this effort moving forward would be to sort of figure out what kinds of increases per year make sense for, the communities that are participating, and what sort of target wage are we working towards. That's definitely not a foregone conclusion. Again, but we do have a pretty tight cap on what the maximum is, which I think
Yeah.
is ways
And
to the
thank
business
you. And that's kind of why maybe Longmont and probably also Boulder, City of Boulder, are outliers in this. But you can't hire anybody for $17 an hour now in Longmont anyway. All the low wage workers are making that much, maybe $16.50, somewhere around there. So that's not to say that the merchants are not going to object in principle because of their political convictions, but I doubt if they are going to see any any direct input in the impacts, at least for the first couple of years. So I agree with Joan, especially in the sense that we know that we're in a period of where people feel like something's being sprung on them. They automatically react negatively to it. So, it's good to bring this forward a bit at a time, but we need to message strongly around the fact in Longmont that it's not going to change things, not for a long time.
Yeah, that it's like a slow build.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, for the subcommittee here, what kind of direction do you need from consortium members? What would be the ask? Is there an ask for us this evening?
There's not an ask, I think, this evening for the, I'm hearing Longmont sounds still interested. Louisville, I believe, is still interested. There's some other communities as well that we're talking to. So I plan on reaching out, and, we have a sort of an agreement that we've, Boulder has worked on with the county a little bit to see, like I was talking about, to have sort of a framework around what's level of participation makes sense moving forward, and how we kind of get a little bit of momentum going here. So I'll be sharing that with you guys, and please, feedback is very welcome and appreciated, so that we can have that. And I would like to see that, if there is an agreement that we could go in place in the next month or two, I think that's kind of would be ideal.
So next steps. Is that it? Like
Next
the next
step.
time we see this group, because we will see each other in February. Would that be, are you going to be sending out information?
Yeah.
For feedback, and then we'll make a decision together in February about the timeline?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Or does that, any have questions about that?
Ari?
I think we have one maybe tip, Lauren, and I don't know if this is way off base or what, but I think in regard to trying to get some feedback from the business community, not so in individual businesses, but organizations that have a focus on wage earning in terms of trying to look at from the private side and then look at it from the public side and see, okay, what's market driven? And what are those market driven indices that drive those wages up? I mean, we all know at a high level what some of the costs, et cetera, but what their analysis is in conjunction with what we try to do and say, okay, you know, how can we then communicate that based on that information and saying, okay, here's one element from the business community that we receive about ABC, where do they see wages going? What's you know impacting the ability for wages to increase so that people can have a livable wage from their perspective, in addition to what we find on our side from another source. I think the businesses would probably be more open to that as an opening discussion item, hearing something from their world of people that they may have trust with, and then we meld into what we have as well, and so they look at the bigger picture. I think in that regard, that might be a possible way to kind of deflect from what I think we all know, which is the business community always kind of wants to reduce or keep their wages at a certain level. For me, I mean, I just, you know, I came out of college making $6.50 an hour for my first job. And so I'm sitting here going, look, wow, $17.50. I know things are different, but I was growing up in Washington, D.C. Costs already were expensive in D.C. So there was already inflation there. And I had to live, you know, I had to get an apartment that was 25 miles outside of the city for $350 a month, and food and all those things, and then parking to get even down there. And so by the end of the month, I don't know, I had like $100-200 left for the month. That's not sustainable for somebody who's coming out of college. So I think that I share in that concern is how do we figure this nut and try to help out.
Yeah, it's a point well taken. Thank you, Ari. We do have, so I've been talking with the Boulder Chamber and also sort of through them, like the Northwest Chamber Alliance, and you know, have been discussing what engagement might look like going forward. So, you know, that they're not, of course, you know, looking for us to move this forward, but they will be, they are interested in being part of the conversation as we start looking at this in more detail.
Well, I think the big thing is they have to be, because the businesses are competing for labor, and there's very little, you know, the labor is not there for them, and they're going, and construction area is a great example. You know, we have a lot of construction going on here in Erie, and we have, you know, in other areas too. And the thing is that I would, based on what I have heard, is that laborers and other construction work, they're going from one place to another. Oh, you're going to offer me X? Oh, I'm going to go there, because they're looking out for themselves and they need the most wages. So that's where the competition is coming from. And I think that's where, and then the cost is put on to people who want to buy homes. The cost of those homes go up. I mean, it's kind of a self-defeating,
It's hard to get
cycle
up on sites these days. Yeah. No, it's definitely all interrelated, and I think that it's a tough nut to crack, but you know, I do think that looking at the wage and how what we can do to try and make the community relatively affordable, that is, yeah, all tied together.
Great. Any other questions? Sounds like to me then we'll hear from y'all in the interim, and then in February we'll just ask folks and consortium members to join us in February for a discussion so that we can really give this group some direction. And that gives everybody an opportunity to talk to their councils and their boards, just to find out where this work may or may not fall into work plans for 2023, and either yes or no is great. And we'll understand, and we just need to give direction to this group. Because things have changed since we originally talked about it, and certainly since 2019, when it was on the table with the Consortium of Cities as well. What I will just share from the county perspective is that we're going to have a new board in January, and so we haven't even been able to have a discussion. But with our current board, the question has just been similar, I think, to some of what you all have shared, is their regional support, and then what would that look like, and really wanting to know the details about those numbers that you talked a little bit about, Councilmember Folkerts, and then the board would make a decision. So we're not actively discussing anything until we have a real decision back from this group about where that support might be regionally. So just to share what our lack of discussion has been and why.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Well, we appreciate all that work, because it's in addition to what we're doing here on Wednesdays for sure. So here's what we're going to do next. We're going to talk about, and Mark sent over an email yesterday, maybe, just in regards to topics, etc. So if you remember, for those of you who were part of the consortium in 2021, we really just did a brainstorm session and threw out ideas, topics, considering that we are using this forum as consortium cities to bring together ideas, projects, needs, wants in regards to support, etc. Using that same format. We just pick some topics so that we start in February with some work. And we also know that we'll have a livable wage conversation and update as part of that agenda. So that's what we're going to do next here. We have about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So I would say we've got do you want to put that list in the chat maybe? Do you mind doing that? And then what I would say, people want to just share out their ideas, and we'll start making a list in addition to what's going to come here in the chat in just a second. And if there's something on this list that you are saying, yes, I do want to put that on the calendar somewhere, that's great. As we're waiting for that list to come up, I have two questions. One, do people want to start meeting in person? And that's just going to be a quick thumbs up or thumbs down on your screen. Is going to be really helpful. So the first question is, do people want to start meeting in person? Yes or no? And we'll just do a quick vote. And we can also, in person doesn't mean it's only in person, because we will figure out this hybrid piece. So when I say in person, it also means hybrid. Conditions permitting, I saw that and got 4 thumbs up. And I'm happy to do that. So thank you. So I think that's going to be our goal, is to start meeting in person, keep the hybrid option, understanding conditions and all the other pieces. The second question then would be, Consortium of Cities used to rotate locations so that we could go visit East Boulder County, and we could go visit, maybe we could even go to Lyons. So is there interest in rotating the locations? Because that also means then somebody would be a host and have to figure their own hybrid situation out. So again, a vote of yes or no. Would you like us to rotate locations in 2023 for in-person hybrid meetings? And it's a yes or no.
Would we have to rotate, or could it we kind of, just because you mentioned needing the hybrid capabilities, and so that might be, I don't know. For some.
Yeah, we were joking on Monday night at our board meeting that we didn't get enough ARPA funding to hire an AV professional to help us with our hybrid. So that is a challenge. And also in terms of accessibility, I think having a central location may be easier. I know, for example, it takes me almost an hour to get to Erie. And so I don't know how people feel about that, but I'm kind of leaning toward having one central location.
Thank you. And we're happy to host here at Boulder County, and we want to at least make that ask if, if folks would really like to see us be in different spots because we represent the county. Go ahead. Did you have a thought?
I was just going to add, it was a pre-pandemic. Remember pre-pandemic? The consortium often would use the courthouse as kind of home base and have perhaps 3 of the meetings a year at the courthouse, and then 3 of the communities would host the other 3 meetings of the year. So we had meetings at the Louisville Library. We had meetings at in Erie. Erie hosted a meeting. Lafayette hosted a meeting one year. It was just a way to kind of get out around the county. But we will figure out the hybrid technology here. Not having it work this evening has provided some real clues as to what we need to do to fix it for next time. So always happy to host here at the courthouse and utilize the technology that's already in place. I will note that hosting meetings here in the summer can be a bit of a challenge because of all the activities that go on the mall, in particular on Wednesday evenings, bands on the bricks, for example. So it just makes accessing the courthouse a little more challenging than it might on a Wednesday night in December. But always happy to do that. And we do have the hybrid technology to make it work for those who would like to participate over Zoom, and then those who would like to participate in person. And then that would also give us the ability to record the meetings and continue posting them on the county website.
Ken, I saw your name or your hand up. Did you have something to share? We have
You're muted there, Ken.
No, yeah, no, I'm good. Thank you.
okay.
Fine.
Thank you. And I saw a couple notes in the chat just in regards to interest, as long as the hybrid piece can be accommodated at different sites. So then maybe what we could do, and this is going to be a quick thumbs up or thumbs down here. Are folks okay with Boulder County being the kind of home base, as Mark was talking about, and then we can figure out whether and if people have interest in. It might be that it's kind of in the summertime where we might not confront weather challenges to be out. Okay. All right. Thank you. So we are gonna in-person hybrid. February we'll plan on being at Boulder County. That'll just make it easy, and then we'll talk about other potential sites. So great, appreciate that. So meanwhile, the list has gone into chat in regards to just examples of the consortium topics from both 2021 and then 2022. And Mark had also sent the dates or calendars for that every other Wednesday. I do want to ask because, and appreciate Mayor Rogan taking a look at those dates before the meeting. And we're on a holy holiday on one of those evenings. And so we need to make a decision about either switching from April 5th to a different date in April, or if we want to shift one meeting to a different month so that we can make sure everybody has access and ability to participate fully with our consortium meetings, because we only meet every other month. So who can give me some, just their thoughts about either switching the April date to a different Wednesday? And I'm asking because it could conflict with a different meeting that y'all have for a different Wednesday of the month. Or if we want to move it to a different month where we don't have a scheduled meeting.
Yeah, I think at least just for me, Dr. Cog meetings are on the first Wednesday, and board sessions, and then the third Wednesday of the month in person down in Denver. every month. So that's the big one. If people are involved in that from here.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great awareness for us. Anyone else have thoughts about what the best direction to reschedule our April meeting? That's what we're trying to determine right now.
How about moving it to the fourth Wednesday? I'm with you down there at DRCOG, Ari.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyone else have a, oh, you're already there, thanks.
That's a long drive, Holly.
Yes,
All
it
the way to
is.
Denver.
58 cents a mile.
Oh.
So that one, April, so instead of April 5th, that would put us at an April 26th meeting. Does anybody have any conflict with that? Otherwise, that sounds like that might be the quickest and easiest, at least with the members that are here this evening, which is what we're working on. Oh, good. I love that thumbs up. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Great. Thank you. So we'll make sure that we get that date changed. And you all can just put it on your calendars right now. So thank you. All right, we have about 10 minutes, which I know this is a major project, but we've also gone through it together a couple of times, so we have a good idea. There's lists in there. Let's hear from folks. What are the topics we want to address in 2023?
Well, I'll start if that's okay.
Yep.
I know we've talked about it before, but I would like to talk about affordable housing a little bit more. In the town of Lyons, we have some really interesting public-private partnerships that may be happening. And I'd be curious to see how the affordable housing landscape is evolving in other communities in the county. I'd also at some point just love an update on the gun violence prevention lawsuits and where other communities are. I know that Lyons didn't get sued. Not sure why, but that's fine. But I'm really curious to know how that's going in the other communities.
Thank you. Other ideas? And I'm typing in the chat, so the whole list will go out here in a minute.
Yeah, I think the affordable housing is a big one that impacts a lot of different areas. And Holly and I were involved. I think you were in the DRCOG today earlier. I don't know if you were in the board session or not, but the main subject was housing and what DRCOG's role should be in that from an affordable housing perspective regionally, what kind of role that they would play. And so they are, it's been on their horizon for a while. And so, and they want, and what was discussed was many of the different communities, Arvada, Jeffco, Erie, obviously, and then the southern part of Denver, those communities all are doing their own affordable housing efforts. They're reaching out to consultants, they're talking to them, they're engaging in that. And so one of the thoughts was, well, maybe there might be a possibility to kind of join forces in a regional level that way. Because so many people are doing so, and for the communities that are smaller, maybe even like Holly's or others, or Jamestown, where maybe they may not have the financial resources to hire these consultants that are expensive, that they can, they shouldn't be left out, because the higher you go, the more expensive the cost, right? Going up into the mountains for homes, and so that was on the agenda to talk about, and so I think that's something that definitely should be there, and whether that's in our forum, it probably would be a good thing to talk about and bring that up to DRCOG up to that level. And the other one is transportation. I think is a big one for the area, at least down here. So.
Thank you. And I wonder, just as a note, we do have that annual transportation update that comes to us.
Trails, right, regional trails and projects, right?
Right. So we could make that full meeting into transportation, because that's about a 30-minute presentation annually. So that's, okay, thank you. The
Yep,
cat,
and
oh,
what
go-
I just had one more, and that was just economic sustainability.
okay,
Because if all the experts are saying we're going into a recession next year, that's going to be huge on how we can try to keep our communities and our people and our businesses alive. We thought we were behind it, obviously, once we were coming out, but that might be a double whammy. So something maybe to put on the horizon.
thank you. I'm ready to hear from the cat. We saw the council member, Martin.
Yes, I hid the cat because he embarrasses me. I like economic sustainability and housing. I think I am hopeful that in spring or summer, Longmont may have a pattern, a prototype. We do have an expensive consultant, and we're getting some really interesting results out of it. And I think that it would be important for us to share as the cheapest land in Boulder County, which is, still, our analysis is that you can't get below 80% of AMI in new construction if you have to pay for the land. So that's a pretty bitter pill when we're trying to do this. The other thing about economic sustainability that I'd like to talk about is we're having this phenomenon in Longmont where the public attitude toward efforts for economic sustainability is very negative. And I would be fascinated to have a discussion about that and see whether that is a universal or whether it's unique to Longmont. So I'd love to see that topic thoroughly discussed.
Thank
What's
you.
the negative stuff you're hearing?
Oh, that you're giving away money that could be spent on public amenities directly, essentially not understanding money creation as a as a thing that is a component of city planning. And or we've never heard about this, or why didn't you put it to a vote? And we'd be voting every week. So that's just the general thing. I mean, there's no surprises to it. It's just it seems to be turning into a universal.
Thank you. We've got about 4 minutes just to do this kind of brainstorm, and because we are going to vote. So who else has some ideas?
I had a community request that maybe we could talk about fireworks or regulations around the community concern is basically like that our community and a lot of others have bans on fireworks, but that there's jurisdictional issues around, places just outside selling them, or basically wanting to have a conversation about how we can mitigate some of those. And I think it really is largely tied to like wildfire and things like that they're worried about fire risk in our community. And so maybe talking about that from a regulation standpoint, and if there's other things that other communities are doing on that front.
Okay, thank you. On the list, Megan?
Yes, I'll go really quick because I know we're running out of time. Affordable housing, definitely, and gun violence prevention would be good updates to have. And then I think the county greenhouse gas emissions report for all the communities will be updated for next year. So it would be good to have a conversation when we get that information compiled about sort of sustainability initiatives and next steps that communities are taking. and maybe sort of status check-in around that. That's a big priority for our community. I think mental health and substance use particularly as it relates to opioid funding as well, and updates on opioid investments in the community through that opioid funding. We would be interested in emergency management and disaster preparedness, which kind of relates to the climate resilience piece that it was on the list as well. And then kind of along with that, I don't know what the process will be for the 2 ballot measures that just passed for wildfire mitigation, as well as for emergency response. And it might, I don't know what role this forum would play in that. So just put that on the radar too. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken?
Yeah, I like everything I heard. I just have a couple things I would like to add. One would be a legislative update, perhaps in June. And the other is I do like the public health presentations.
Public health, what was the last?
The presentations, general presentations.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just add in there, maybe what I'm thinking, and people can push me off the island here, that's fine. Yeah, thanks, got it. We couldn't, if we think about kind of these big topics, how we've been doing, and then people can bring in, like, here's what we're focusing on under mental health as an example. And I say that because from the county perspective, we are talking about behavioral health and potential tax ballot measure. So when I hear that, that's one thing that we could bring into that conversation as well. So I'm going to hit list of ideas here. This is what we talked about. And I did, when I heard people add in, I just put it in there as okay, now we've got 2 people, now we've got 3 people interested. Give folks a second here to look at that and tell me if we're missing anything that folks are interested in.
I don't think there's anything missing. I want to add another vote for the local ballot measures. I think, one of our questions in Lyons has been, okay, so the wildfire mitigation tax passed. How do we access those funds? What does that look like? How can they help? So that would be great to know.
Thank you. And in the Zoom, I can't change. I can't edit that. I don't know how to do. That's like one time I'll say that Teams would be helpful. The only time. Anything else we're missing from this list? Okay, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to narrow this list down to 6 items. And keeping in mind, I think there may be something here that could cross over and fit into your presentation to speak about one item or the other, but so I'll give folks a chance to put down in your notes what you're going to vote for, because we have only 6 months of meetings. Do you have an idea how you want to do this?
If you wanted to just settle on one, if you needed more time to think about it, you could come back in February, but we would ideally have a decision around the February meeting topic today so that planning can move forward. But you could ponder the rest of the meetings and make a decision in February.
I'll let you all respond. Do you want to try and get through all 6 in 3 minutes, or do we want to just come to an agreement on a topic right now that we can focus on for February, knowing that we are going to get a livable wage update again in February? Well, I wanted to say, Councilmember Martin's idea there is a great one. Yep, I seconded. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the big conversations I think is going to happen in the state legislature,
Sure.
there we go, down at the Capitol, is going to be around local land use issues. And the state has a role to play in there, but specifically the intersection between transportation and housing. And I, just seeing that both of those conversations have multiple votes, it would be interesting for this group to talk about that intersection between housing and transportation and what we have done in the past and what we are going to do in the future to better connect those two issues to ensure that we are making the best land use decisions that we can. So that would be one suggestion I'd heard.
Thank you. And there was another one here in the chat about the legislative review, and maybe the topic is legislative agenda, legislative session, and then folks can bring in what their community is working on or focusing on or questions. How would that feel to folks without feeling under pressure to make a decision right now? We have a thumbs up.
I think the county can be a big part of that conversation in terms of the legislative preview.
Absolutely, and we could lean on the other communities that are active in that space, as well as association. I mean, it actually could be really interesting to have a rep from TML come and present, perhaps, or even our county association. The only hesitancy I have about a February legislative update is that the legislature will just have kind of gotten going, and we may know a lot about what's been introduced and what's happening, but none of that will have really moved forward by the time the consortium meets in February. The big land use bill that Devin referenced may not even be introduced yet by then. I mean, who knows where that conversation is going to go in the next 2 months. And actually, I'd be surprised if there is legislation in that space that it's even introduced by early February. So I would just be worried a little bit that conversation might, the legislative side of it might be a bit premature, but the content side around transportation, affordable housing, connecting, or transportation and housing, connecting those two and having that kind of conversation in February would make sense, certainly.
I think the timing you brought up on the legislative review is a really important one because, there's also often a lot of interest in sort of going over what has happened or what was signed and how that impacts our communities and what we planned, sort of how we plan to move forward with it. As opposed to what we might lobby for or help support.
I think the affordable housing and land use, what came up in our discussion was for if you're going to try to put affordable housing into Erie, you need density. And where your density is going to be is around mass transit. And so I think there's a linkage there that you can probably roll that into that, at least in Erie, to buy land. To Marcia's point, it's $1.3 million to buy an acre of land in Erie. You cannot put an affordable house unless the town of Erie owns it, which we just purchased a piece of land for a little less than that for affordable housing, but that's only one lot. So I think where the density comes in is right around their transit, which allows those who may not have a car to be able to get on mass transit, go on light rail or a BRT. So all of it is in one place. So you might be able to combine those.
I'm curious, just based on that conversation about where the legislature will be in the beginning of February, if we want to, then the next meeting would be the end of April, which then would be close to the end of the session. It's like the other extreme. But one option would be to have the conversation about affordable housing in February, and each community can bring in what they're working on, what they're looking for, etc. And certainly, if y'all send your presentations and your questions early enough to Mark, then we could be prepared to bring some other information. does that feel like what people are wanting out of a conversation around legislative or legislative update? Councilmember Martin, did you have?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Was that a
Did I
yes?
still have my hand up? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I thought you were trying to say something.
Oh, no, my phone made a noise. I'm sorry. I forgot to mute myself.
That's okay. What do y'all think? You're here in the room.
So talking about housing, affordable housing in February, potentially talking about legislative stuff. And I mean, it's the end of April, so I mean, we are getting close to the end of the session when it's actually.
Things have already been presented. Just what does that feel like, Mark?
Sure, and we could certainly, in early February, we could certainly talk about what's being discussed at the Capitol around affordable housing legislation, land use legislation, transportation legislation, and include that in a conversation, sharing as much as we know at that point in time, right? And what's being talked about and being considered, what role the governor is going to play in those conversations. I would find it helpful to get, well, I guess each community can tell the story the way they would want to tell the story. But if there were some common themes that consortium members would like to see touched on about housing / affordable housing / transportation, it'd be helpful to know that in advance so that guidance can be shared out to all the communities and your staff and others can think about that. Or you can all bring your own stories to the table and share it that way.
Do folks feel good with that? Meaning, and when I say that, February meeting will focus on affordable housing, and that might be, for somebody, it might be land use. For somebody, it might be whatever that is. Folks experiencing homelessness, it all is connected around housing. And then we'll work on the legislative agenda, something around that for April. Okay.
I'll just give all the council and board folks here just a little tip that the mayors and commissioners coalition, the MCC Northwest MCC focused on transportation, is having conversations about TOD, transit oriented development, as it relates to housing. And so several staff in the communities have prepared slides around that. So that information might already be prepared for this discussion. Yeah.
That would be great. Get to share that with Mark later.
Yeah. I think that Ari brings up a great point, around density. And I think that's a major conversation when we're looking at land use within Broomfield, is around density and what that means, both in a good thing as well as negative kind of reaction to it.
Yeah, and the one other thing I'll bring up is just from a DRCOG meeting today was that the land use legislation at the state level, what I heard from several of the directors who are elected officials in various parts was what I sensed and what they said was a mini freak out about local control of their land use policy, and that they feel that the state is going to be taking that over. And I think, to your point, Devin, I think they're missing the point in terms of the intersection of transportation and land use along where those areas are of that CDOT wants to do and wants to improve upon. But that came out very clearly that they have a major freak out about local control loss to the state. And I think it might be overblown, but that's, it is state of Colorado. Everything's down to the minutiae of local control.
Is that a legislative term? The mini
freak out.
I would classify it as a legislative term because I think, because some people, they're really, they were really touchy on that issue. And DRCOG, they were like, oh, we don't want the state controlling our local control for our land use and what we're going to do and all this stuff. And I'm like, what's even the context of that conversation yet? They haven't even started talking about it yet. So Yeah, but I'd like to call it freak out, but I didn't say that in person. So
You know, I'd freak out too if I were in the presence of that statement, because, you know, we have these elaborate city planning things that are built around changes in density and
Yeah.
TOD. And if the state gets its fingers in it, how could one size possibly fit all?
yeah, I agree. I think it's just really more about what the context of where the state role would be. And I don't think that that's been talked about clearly.
Thank you, everybody. We have made some decisions. We have a plan for February. We are over time, which really I don't think has ever happened on my watch. So that's okay. It's the end of the year. So we will be at Boulder County in February. We will be hybrid ready. But you all are welcome to meet us down at the courthouse in February. I hope everybody has a safe holiday season. And I hope it's safe. I hope you all are in good health. I just want to appreciate all of the work, the conversation, the emailing that happens. I want to again thank staff, Megan, Mark. Am I missing anybody else who's still on at this hour? You all help us do the work that we're doing, and I really mean that sincerely, because we are on 24/7. That was our choice, but you all help us do this work. So thank you, and send a thank you to Taylor as well. Appreciate everybody. Have a great night. Be safe. Take care.
Night,
Take care,
everybody.
everybody. Happy holidays.
Yeah.